How did teachers deal with students who were afraid to speak up and answer questions in class, but were actually knowledgeable about the subject matter? I once had a student who was deathly afraid to speak during class. She wouldn't answer when called on, and when she was told to team up with other students, she stayed in her seat, alone. I pulled her aside after the second class and I got her to speak to me, a little bit. She mostly just nodded or shook her head and avoided eye contact. She finally managed to say that she hated asking questions in front of others and she really hated getting called on to answer questions out loud. I told her, I need to know what's going on in your head. I need to know if you're understanding the lesson or if you're confused. This is a communication class, and you won't be able to pass if you can't communicate. I'll make you a deal. I will never call on you in class again if you will promise me that you will ask questions. I don't even care if you do it out loud. Slip me a note during class, email me afterwards, come to office hours privately, I don't care, but you have to let me know when you don't understand something. She agreed and I made sure to give the whole class regular, short writing assignments so that she, and other, more introverted students, could have a chance to collect their thoughts and share their ideas without feeling overwhelmed by their more outgoing classmates during discussions. I checked in with her after class again a few weeks later. She was doing pretty well, but I was worried. My midterm is a group project and my final is a speech. Neither of these played to her strengths. I warned her that this was going to be a challenge, but I needed her to try her best and I would be there to help however I could. I made sure to put her in a group with people whom I knew to be very kind and patient. I hoped for the best and they vastly exceeded my expectations. Not only did they kindly encourage her to speak, they quickly came to realize that she had some really good and creative ideas and they praised her like crazy for them. She came out of her shell a little bit, and even managed to speak for a minute or two during their group presentation. The entire class cheered wildly for her because they knew how hard it was for her to get up there and get any words out at all. When it came time for the final speech, I knew she had been working hard to prepare. She researched her subject, prepared a good outline, and practiced a lot at home. But when I called her up to take her turn, she went silent and put her head down on her desk. Fortunately, I had purposely put her name right in the middle of the speaker list just before we were scheduled to take a break. I told the class we'd take our break a few minutes early and waited until everyone left so I could talk with her privately. I told her, look, I'm gonna level with you. This is a freshman level class. I don't expect you to give an amazing speech, I just expect you to put your words together in a way that we can hear and understand. If you just get up there and get through it, you'll probably earn at least a C even if it goes terribly, which it won't. What's the worst that could happen? Maybe you'll get a 50%. That's still 50 points that you wouldn't have earned if you didn't try to stand up there. 50 points could be the difference between an F and a C for the course. Please just try to say something so I can give you some points and you can pass. She nodded and I sent her to get some water and take a few deep breaths before the class returned. When they got back, she went up to the front. Her face was beet red but she didn't run. I was so proud of her just for getting up there, and when I looked around the room, I saw the other students were smiling and nodding encouragingly, just like I was. They were all cheering her on, too. In the end, she got through the entire speech. She was shaky, but she said what she came to say. She even cracked a joke, and it was genuinely funny. Everyone clapped riotously for her and I could see the hint of a smile when she returned to her seat. I only saw her once more after that semester ended. Our paths crossed a few months later on campus. When she saw me, her face lit up, she wrapped me in a tremendous hug, and then she ran away. She said all that she needed to say. To this day, I couldn't be prouder of her. What was your craziest senior prank? This prank was masterminded by my older sister. Actually, I only took part in it by not telling anybody what I knew about it. But it was a really super great prank that harmed no one. This happened when I was a freshman in high school and my sister was a senior. I was in English class when the teacher wanted to erase something from the chalkboard, but he couldn't find an eraser. Most classrooms had 2 or 3 erasers, but in this classroom there were none to be found. The teacher started complaining about it, when he was interrupted by one of the students in the class. The student said, I know where they are. They're behind the clock. This school had clocks that were all connected together with wires that went into the walls, so that they would all show the exact same time. If you took a clock off of the wall, you would see a big hole that the wires on the clock went into. This hole was big enough to hold several chalkboard erasers. The student who said this was known to be a class clown, so at first the teacher didn't believe him. But he kept bugging him about it, so the teacher finally took the clock off the wall and looked into the hole. There were no erasers in the hole. I thought this whole thing was really bizarre, so when I was having dinner with my family, I told them about this weird thing that had happened in my English class. After dinner, my sister took me aside and said she wanted to talk with me, privately, away from my parents. She took me into her room and told me that she and her friends had been gradually stealing all the chalkboard erasers in the school. It was meant to be a prank, and they intended to return them eventually. Originally, they put the erasers behind the clocks, so the kid in my English class was actually right, but then they found out that this had somehow come out to other students who were not in on the prank, and they were telling the teachers, like the kid in my English class. So they went back and removed the erasers from behind the clocks. And so where were the erasers now? They were in 2 paper grocery sacks in the crawl space in the basement of our house. Of course, my parents knew nothing about this and she swore me to secrecy about it. Being a fellow teenager who thought this was the cleverest prank in the world, I complied. After that, I got to witness all kinds of chaos that happened as a result of the disappearance of all the chalkboard erasers. You wouldn't think it would be such a big deal, but you would be wrong. A teacher would become aware that there were no erasers in their classroom, and send a student to fetch one from another classroom, only to have that student return empty-handed. Soon, Everybody in the school was talking about the missing erasers, and nobody had a clue about how or why they had disappeared. See, the thing was, my sister was not normally a troublemaker. She was a very good student who got high grades, and was very popular in the vocal music department. So were her friends that were in on the prank. So nobody suspected at all that they were behind this. She told me that at one point, when they were getting all the erasers out of the school building, she waked through the school office with a guitar case full of erasers, with nobody the wiser. This was all incredibly fun for me to witness. I got to hear both students and teachers spouting all kinds of theories about what had happened to the erasers, knowing that they were all wrong, and that I was one of only a very few people who really knew the truth. Both popular kids and troublemaking kids claimed to be the ones who did it, but it was all BS and they totally didn't know what they were talking about. One teacher got a rag to replace her eraser. She made the mistake of saying to her class that she liked the rag better than her eraser. Guess what got stolen the very next day? Eventually, my sister and her friends got the music teacher involved in the prank. They got the teacher to sign off on an announcement for a meeting of GET, an organization that was purportedly called Greater Educational Techniques, but was actually the Great Eraser Thieves. An announcement of a GET meeting was actually broadcast over the school's PA system. The erasers were eventually returned. Here's how. They sneaked the erasers back into the school after a choir concert. The school had paneled ceilings where you could push up a panel to reveal a space between the ceiling and the inner ceiling. They pushed up a ceiling panel and put the bags of erasers up there, positioning it so that anybody else who pushed up the ceiling panel would get a bunch of erasers raining down on them. Then they drew a map of the school which showed where the erasers were hidden and glued it to a children's jigsaw puzzle. They cut apart the puzzle pieces and put each one into an envelope, and put the envelopes in the teacher's mail slots in the school office. The next morning, once the word got out about what was in these envelopes, the assistant principal went frantically through all the mailboxes to collect all the envelopes. And, as intended, when he found the panel that contained the erasers and pushed on it, he got a bunch of erasers falling down on his head. What are the biggest culture shocks people face when coming to Germany? I've been living in Germany for 25 years now, 20 of them as a comedian in German. Here are some of my thoughts on the matter. How are you culture shock? When Germans ask you how you're doing, they really mean it. They really want an answer. This isn't America where people ask how's it going? And don't give a damn. If Germans ask you a question, it's to get an answer, not to be nice to you, or to make a new friend, but to get information. If they weren't interested in the answer, they wouldn't have asked the question in the first place. Answering questions culture shock. When you answer a question in Germany, provide as many details as possible. Don't just say I'm feeling lousy today, or I have a serious headache. Where are the details in that? If you have a headache, mention the fact that the high humidity, enter humidity level here, has your blood pressure screaming. And mention blood pressure numbers here, and top it all off by stating, considering my numbers, I'm surprised that I'm even conscious. The telling it like it is culture shock. I once asked a German friend, do you think I'm fat? His answer, not for an American. I of course was insulted, hurt, upset, but the thing is this, don't go fishing for compliments in Germany. If you're fat and you want someone in Germany to tell you that you aren't, forget it. That person doesn't exist. Small food portion culture shock. I was invited to a restaurant once as part of a welcome dinner to Germany and promptly ordered my dinner. When it arrived, I told the waitress, excuse me, there must be a mistake because I didn't order the kids' menu. It wasn't the kids' menu, it was the normal adult menu. And upon hearing this, I said, then I'll take 2 please. Service culture shock. In Germany, waiters don't work for tips. This means that when you say to the waiter, check please when you're done with the meal, he'll often understand this as a perfect opportunity to go on his break or quit his job forever and emigrate to New Zealand. Condom machine culture shock. Germans aren't prudish at all, and this is why they even have condom machines in the men's room at IKEA. I once asked a German friend, can you believe it, condom machines at IKEA? He looked at me in a rather puzzled way and asked, why not? As long as they're not made out of wood. What an answer, right? Telling time culture shock. Germans have a complicated way of telling time. You'll ask someone what time it is and you'll hear, it's 5 minutes past 7:30. 5 Minuten nach halb acht. I almost had a seizure the first time I heard this had it not been for the guy who told me in English, it's 7:35. Malzeit culture shock. When you go to a public building to get your visa extended, register your car, your apartment, your dog or your baby, you'll hear people muttering the word Malzeit to one another along Kafka-like hallways. This is what German civil servants say when it gets close to mealtime and it's time to take a break. If you want to fit in, answer with a Malzeit of your own. Change the tonality and have fun with it. Walk down the hallway yelling Malzeit, 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 and no one will look at you like you're weird. Nudity in the sauna culture shock. If you visit a German sauna, it's mostly, as Germans call it, a textile-free environment. But the great thing about it is that no one cares. It's all random body parts sweating together. Big, small, long, short, who cares? Okay, I do, but they don't. Last but not least, driving on the German Autobahn culture shock. The German Autobahn usually has 3 lanes with 3 different speed levels. And they are fast, faster and Mach 3. If you want to drive slowly, stay to the right. If you want to break the sound barrier, stay to the left. If you don't want to do either of these things, take the train. I hope that this was helpful.